Right, so it's wonderful to be here. I've been immersed in the business of love for, well, 12 years and in the business for 20 years at this stage. I work with my wife. We're a husband and wife team. Sometimes that can work. And we do strategy, business development, marketing, and media relations for many, many dating companies. We also run the industry portal Online Personals Watch, so we summarize the news for the decision makers in the industry. We've been doing that for a very long time now. So we actually go back to 2004. So what I'd say is if there's a particular company that you want to research, you can go down to around here, just below the subscription boxes, and there's a whole bunch of research options there if you want to go and check into some particular companies that are inspiring for you. The essence of what I'd like to cover over the next 15 minutes is for the love of personals. Do you really like the personals industry? I'm not sure you do. I've looked over some classified services now, and I'll show you my thoughts. Room for improvement? I think there is. The future of internet dating and personals. What are the challenges that we've got that I think you might actually have some partial solutions for? Scene setting. There's actually 53% of single people have created dating profiles at this stage in the USA. This is a Match.com study. And 40% of singles have dated someone that they've met online. So people are using internet dating as a standard these days. 1 in 6 singles actually feels addicted to dating at this stage, so some people are choosing not to choose. Let's talk about the evolution of dating. This is very appropriate for, I think, where a lot of you are at with classifieds is, you know, in the beginning, back when personals were in newspapers, they were very flat. They were just, you know, listings. They were you couldn't search. So the first real change was going to search. For the first time in about the 1995 time, a website called webpersonals.com popped up, and you could search, you could find what you're looking for very quickly. And then around the early 2000s, there became a lot more options for communication. So you could search, you can find them, then what? Well, you want to message them and text them and do voice messaging and use video even. But I think the holy grail is compatibility. I think this is where most of the value will be unlocked in this industry, is when we really do, when the internet dating industry really does get to know users about what their preferences are, both stated and non-stated, very big difference, and does a better job with profiling and compatibility. Now, one of the luminaries in this industry is Anupam Mittal. I actually, in March, went to India for 2 weeks and interviewed companies in Chennai and Mumbai and in Delhi. And Anupam is the CEO of and founder of Shardi. And he said in this documentary, his quote was, "It's all well and good going to Amazon. And you buy a book, you buy something, you buy a book. But in our industry, a book doesn't have to like you back. You know, it's a two-way match. It's not just buying, it's a two-way match. Vastly compounded complexity because of that, really. So the real big challenge that we have, the big challenges that we have in our industry, and I wanted to cover this first because I want you to think about this as we go through the rest of the presentation. We have the limited information problem. We've done an awful lot with very little, if you think about it. People don't really self-describe very well, and they don't really know what they want, funnily enough. The other problem is the continuity problem. It's really a very unattractive industry because if we do a good job, and the better job that we do, we wave goodbye to our users. That's kind of ridiculous. If we do a good job, we say goodbye to them. We'll come back to that. Now, Simon, I was in Simon's presentation yesterday, pre-conference, and my big takeaway from that is that you are moving from search. You're going to be into an area of matching people with products and creating more value and getting closer to the full potential of value by eventually moving into a marketplace arena. And it's like, how will you get the profiles? How will you incentivize? Why would people give you more information about themselves? And I would theorize that you could actually use the profiles from, there is some opportunity to get to know users via the dating classified section. How will you get to know them better? So let's have a look at Craigslist real quickly. Craigslist is the big standard in dating. And some of the positives with Craigslist is that they separate the categories for relationships and casual. And the categories do appear quite well enforced. But the casual encounter section is not subdivided by preferences. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity in here just to break things out further. You've got to wade through a lot of classifieds to get anywhere. There's very limited search, there's very poor browsing, and the usability is just full of acronyms as well. If we look at Backpage, the story is even more tawdry, unfortunately. They've had a real problem with, they've been investigated by the government, the CEO has been arrested for sex trafficking apparently, escorts have dominated the dating category. So it's, you know, you've got reason here to be very careful with this segment. It does require some level of policing. And Backpage has improved. They've taken steps to reduce the trafficking, and they've also got ad enhancements available. But overall, the user experience, as we looked over the classifieds in this industry, is that it's pretty bad user experience. There's poor consumer sentiment. There's a rife escort scammers and fake profiles, and what policies there are seem to be fairly unenforced. There are a lot of scammers. There's a lot of fraudulent activity, and there's a lot of escorts and fake ads, basically. So, and search is relatively non-existent. There's a limited search options, and there's a lack of standardization around the profile. So often it's just like whatever you want to say in your ad. It's very open form. And the posting locations are poorly enforced, so the geographical boundaries don't seem to be very well enforced. We have really moved towards mobile dating, mobile more. I mean, many industries, of course, have moved massively to mobile, but I would say none more so than dating. Because if you think about it, if you've got someone on the hook and you're trying to reel them in, you're not going to leave it until the end of the day to get back onto the desktop. So we moved to mobile more quickly than most industries. And indeed, at this stage, it's more like 70 to 80% of the industry is on mobile apps. So think of Tinder, for example. So when we looked around the classified industry, there seems to be quite a few third-party apps, which is not ideal. Native apps really provide the best user experience, and that's really because of notifications. What we found that really lifted our numbers, our engagement numbers, was letting people know when they've been messaged by someone that they're trying to reel in. That greatly lifted our numbers. It's really important to have an official app. I think it looks good for your brands. And fraud prevention is an absolute mainstay in this segment. You can't not do first-rate fraud prevention. There are some tools which the industry has used over the years, the dating industry has used over the years. Iovation, full disclosure, they're a former client. Iovation, Threat Metrics, and Count with a K. Some have even used 41st parameter. I got talking with Distill Networks yesterday, and they sound like they've got a very good solution for device fingerprinting, and also for dealing with site scraping as well, in a similar camp. So it's very important to be proactive in this, and also possibly verify accounts. To get a leg up over the dating industry, we've not done the best job with verifying accounts and identity. And I think you're in a position to be able to do that quite effectively. So some more suggestions. Notifications and alerts, super key, I think, in your classifieds businesses, but even more so if you're going to go after the personal segment. You also should look at search history. Often what people say they want is very different in their profiles. You know, when they put into their profiles, here's who I am and here's what I want, then they'll go and search for something entirely different. So if you actually look at their user behavior in the search function, then you can get an idea of what they really want, at least in the moment. And you should really be separating the casual and escort categories. In terms of monetization, I think it's important to charge a nominal fee. This will allow you to do some level of customer service and enhance your fraud prevention. It's really important to do ad enhancements too. Badoo's made a lot of money from just allowing people to bubble up their profiles, put a border on them, pretty up their give people the chance to get more attention, an unfair share of attention. You may even choose to refer your relationship or otherwise your dating traffic to a third party, and I'm certainly able to matchmake you with companies if that's what you decide to do. Market numbers. So what's the potential here? How well is the dating industry doing? Well, back in 2011, this is numbers worldwide, there were around 360 million people who were online using dating. Now it's up to several hundred million. In fact, that's by 2019. They're predicting several hundred million people. So just since 2011, it's up 42%. The hot markets are India, Russia, and Eastern Europe, by the way. The top dating sites in the USA, you'd guess Plenty of Fish, Match, and you'd be right. These are the two top services. Here's the growth numbers too. And I should note these are all down, and they're down because these numbers are specifically for average monthly visits, desktop and mobile combined, not apps. And that's very, very key. This is no longer the dating industry, it's the mobile dating industry. So that's where users are typically hanging out these days. Having said that, I know somebody else had mentioned that, you know, desktop is dead. It's not dead. Actually, with Comscore numbers from November last year, globally, the number of desktops has risen 4%, with the majority of the growth happening in Latin America. Latin America was year over year up 11% for the number of desktops. So don't write off desktops quite yet. In fact, Tinder is going to be introducing desktop. It's not just going to be on the mobile phone now. They're actually introducing a desktop app, a desktop service. So where's the money? Where are people spending most money? Turns out eHarmony is taking the lion's share. They make $129 per paying member, followed by Match. And Match Group revenues, they're at $1.2 billion at this stage, with $300 million, in fact that's 2016, they did $1.2 billion with about 300 million profit on that. So very strong. Another company that I'd like to put on your radar is MeetMe, and they're doing something quite interesting in an interesting space. They sit between dating and social networking. Social networking, Facebook. I mean, you go to Facebook if you want to stay in contact with somebody you already know. You go to dating to meet someone for love and relationship, but the middle ground is what we call social discovery, and MeetMe is in that camp. So you go to MeetMe, not necessarily for dating, mainly for dating, but not necessarily. They're doing around about 20 million on $75 million in revenue, and they're shooting for 50 million on 150. So the long story short, they're a success story in the industry, and they're doing it off video. They're getting this growth off video now, and they're modeling a company called Momo, which is doing close on $1 billion a year run rate in Asia, in China. Momo monetizes on video. The point that I'd like to make here is that it's important to start thinking towards new media and video. People are warming up to video now. I'm going to run you through a few innovations in the industry. Hopefully it'll inspire you. Match.com just launched a chatbot in France. And this is as a personal assistant, essentially. It's a coaching service, ultimately. The League has introduced read receipts. What that means is when you send a message and if you get to know if that person has read the message that you've sent. And they're charging $180 a year. And this is one of the things that they add in for that membership. $180 a year. And this is really to fight ghosting. A lot of people will go online, they'll have a nice chat, and then they'll go dead quiet. That's called ghosting, and there's a few services now that are fighting that phenomenon. Another interesting development, Hinge is offering a $99 a month personal assistant. There is opportunity with coaching. People need help. And in fact, around 10% of our paying audience will pay significantly more for matchmaking services and coaching, is what we generally know. Let's talk about user behavior real quickly. Video. Let's get back on the video. I think in general, it's more important for you to start thinking about video interaction. In the past, people didn't really want to create video, but they wanted to consume it. There was never a question about them wanting to consume video. But two companies are driving the change now towards people being more comfortable making video. And those two companies are Facebook with their live video and Snapchat. This is changing consumer behavior. And really, the evolution of video is accelerating. It started off as live video back in the 20s, went to on-demand with services like Netflix. A couple of years ago, Snapchat came about and we went semi-live. Now it's going real and live with Facebook Live. And the way people are communicating is changing. It used to be primarily text, actually it used to be voice, but then it moved to text. And in the future, it's really going to be images. The Generation Z, which is age 1 to 20, are really focused on communicating with images. And the dynamic is different. They're using their camera, they're telling stories, they're being more creative. and then they're messaging and sharing. And I think that's going to change some of the way that you will interact with your users. It's certainly changed ours. But it's not all roses in the dating industry. This is a very significant study by Consumer Reports of 115,000 users. This is basically looking at their consumer satisfaction. These are the companies. OkCupid did the best, followed by Tinder. And red is bad. Green is good. There's one entry for green, and that is Tinder for value. The rest were bleeding red. So you tell me, is there opportunity here? As I said, the biggest challenges are that we have the limited information problem, and I think you're in an interesting position to be able to get more information. I think we're not going to be able to get enough on our own. We need to look to different apps. We need to look to different segments, perhaps, for buyer behavior and preferences, not just stated preferences, but what you observe from their behavior. And you're in a nice situation to actually get this information, to be able to help users do better matching. And you certainly don't have the continuity problem that the dating industry has. You're not going to wave goodbye to users. They're just going to move to a different part of the service, of your classified service. So in some ways, the problems that we have are not the problems that could plague you. And that's it. Thank you.
Why don't you include LinkedIn in your list?
Why would I? Why would I? It's social networking. You go to LinkedIn primarily because you know somebody. You might well discover other people, but it's maybe social discovery, it's definitely social networking, and it's a long, long way from dating. I've got a guy on my team actually who uses Yelp for dating. So you can use many different communication services for dating, but it's not designed for dating. Indeed, Facebook is not designed for dating. They've been very explicit about not being associated with dating. It's actually, as soon as you get into a dating camp, you're not social networking. It kills the social networking element.
This is interesting, right? Because it's sort of it's not a one-to-one, it's like usually 1,000-to-1 type relationship here. What do the apps do, or the companies do? How do they think about, I guess that this is really, what's the core of this question is around matching, right? How are they providing better tools to cut out the crap so that at least you're having a meaningful, relatively meaningful communication with someone?
Compatibility is at the heart of good dating services, I think, and even if you look at what Tinder's been talking about, they're trying to look at people's behavior. Ultimately, people will tell you everything if you only observe, if you look at their behavior in the moment. Plenty of Fish, for example. So I worked with Plenty of Fish for 6 years, by the way, and what Plenty of Fish does is if, for example, a guy goes on to Plenty of Fish and says, I'm interested in a long-term relationship, but then he proceeds to search for a short-term casual relationship, then the database will morph around that profile, that guy, so that the woman who is only interested in a long-term relationship doesn't get exposed to the guy who has shown that he's really interested in a casual relationship. So that's a fairly rudimentary example of how the industry is starting to look at behavior and using that towards compatibility profiling. eHarmony is the gold standard in terms of getting a lot of information and matchmaking based off that. There are two different schools of thought: search versus matchmaking. eHarmony is matchmaking, and then you can't even search on eHarmony. Then there's OkCupid, which is kind of middle ground. You can put a whole ton of information in there. You can ask a lot of questions, and they allow you to search, but they're also making recommendations. Most services will allow you to search, but also send you an email with recommendations.
So Mark, thank you very much.
Cool, thank you.